First of all, what is first fruits? Maybe that'll help you. What is first fruits?
It's like isn't it the first of the crops that you harvest, and you give it to God as His portion, and then you keep what's left. Yeah.
Who in the sacrifices? Remember, who received the first fruits when they did it? The priest, the Levites.
Oh.
Okay, remember. So remember, first fruit is really the first of the first. It's the first crop. That's the first heads that ripen of the crop. Because what you're doing is you're saying that if this is good, if this is blessed from the provider above, He's faithful and good enough to provide the rest of it to be just fruitful, if not more so. The first fruit was really to commemorate the idea that God is the provider. God is the source of all that we have. Life itself, not just life itself, but all the agricultural products He allows us to produce. Yes, we do the work sometimes. But if you remember, this time when they went first into the land, they didn't do the work. It was already there. And but sometimes, subsequent to that, they did do the labor. But remember, it's God that gives you the strength to do the labor. So remember, everything comes from God. So the first fruit was the first of the first. And the reason why they call it first fruit, because remember in the month of Nisan, the first crop to ripen was the barley crop. And the latter, then 49 days later, this is important to catch what I went from this morning. The days that we're looking at is that after the first fruit, which is the barley crop, 49 days later, remember what happened after we spent the Passover, 49 7 perfection Sundays later, not Sundays, Sabbaths later, comes the Spirit, the resurrecting power of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the empowerment. It's like it did in church. On the 5th day, the Holy Spirit came to empower them. So really, what this is about is God's power. So on that first crop of the season was the barley. And if you're looking at what God tells them in this lesson, He tells them to give so much of that when they do the sacrifices and the wine and the sheep to go along with it. But when it gets to the second crop, which is 49 days later, which is the wheat crop, the measurements double. You notice that? The measurements double. And there's a reason for that. And Jesus says in Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is required. The point being is one topic to last week's lesson, is that God gives us, and we get the first fruits because it's just to say, it's a starting point to see, and old folks say, to see and watch God show out in your life by being obedient to His command. So, what you see is what we can hope out in today's lessons is the first fruit of the barley crop, then later on the wheat crop, which is the latter rain crop, and then after that comes that next day after that Sabbath, which is the first day of the week, is Pentecost. Okay, so let's look at our first reading. Our first reading we're going to look at is Exodus 13. Exodus 13, verse 1. Amen. And this is important. But did y'all answer my question though earlier? Why? But I read that verse. It just trick. You gotta answer my question. What about the firstborn? Why the firstborn?
Why the what?
Why the firstborn?
Why the first?
Or the first fruit? Why the first fruit? Yes, it is the Lord's for His people. True enough. But I want you to tie to what's happening. I want you to tie this to what has happened to them. Remember what's the first fruit? If you remember on the plagues, what was the God did on the last? I think it was the last plague.
killed
the Passover. It's talking about the Passover.
the firstborn son.
Yeah, firstborn son
Well, what? What about firstborn?
with the Passover.
Yeah.
They were gonna die.
Yeah, that was the last plague that he gonna kill the firstborn of Egyptians, but he spared the firstborn of the Israelites
Okay.
with the blood.
God took the firstborn
Mm-hmm.
of the Egyptians and spared
the,
those under the blood. Okay.
under the blood.
Okay. Okay. So he's reminding them, you're going to a new land. Yeah, you had everything. But you're going to a land now that I'm giving you new rules. And before you can follow those rules, you need to have a Sabbath first. Because remember, the purpose of the Sabbath is to commemorate these days. If you don't got a Sabbath day, how are you going to commemorate the feast of booths, feast of trumpets, the Passover, and all the other ones? Okay, so he gives them the path. He gives them the Sabbath, and after he gives them the Sabbath, he ordinates the first feast of first fruits. And remember, so let's read Numbers. Wow. Exodus 13, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and beast, is mine. Is mine. Okay? And remember, he says it's mine, but that was, but in the actual use of that, when it was given to the Lord, that was a portion that was given to, along with the wave offering, to the priests and Levites. Let's look at Numbers 6:20. Amen. And the priest shall wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. I mean, after you give it to the priest, bring it to the tabernacle, temple, whatever, tabernacle. They are a holy portion for the priest, together with the breast, that's the rest of the meat that they sacrifice, that is waved, and the thigh that is contributed. And after that, the Nazarite may drink wine. Okay? So when they did the wave offering was the first ripe shoots of the barley or the wheat. And they waved them toward the altar of the sacrifice, up and down, and this way, making the sign of the cross, the wave offering. Propitiation, up and down. What's this? Talk to me. I'll tell you more than once. The cross, the vertical cross, the vertical beam of the cross. As far as the east is from the west, will your sins be what?
Forgiven.
Wiped away. Forgiven. That's expiation. E-X-P-I-A-T-O-N. Up and down, propitiation. God atoning for God in Jesus Christ, atoning to God the Father for our sins. Propitiation. Granting favor back to us. That's the sign of the cross. And this is what the priests were doing the wave offering, making this sign. Waving that sheaf. God's going to bless it, and he's going to give us more so than this year, because we've done what he asked us to do by giving the first fruit first. Mm-hmm. And once the first fruit's dedicated, you're blessing the other part. It's like Jesus Christ is our first fruit. If he rose, shall we rise?
Yes.
We will rise.
Yes.
Because he is the first fruit. And he's given us the spirit of guarantee that we will arise as he rose. Let's look at 1 Corinthians 15. A very familiar passage we've used over and over again. 1 Corinthians 15.
Did you read Numbers?
Yes.
Did you read? Okay.
Yes.
Did we read Numbers?
Yes.
Number 20.
Okay.
Okay.
6:20.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 15, 22 and 23. Amen.
Amen.
1 Corinthians 15, 22. For as in Adam all die, also in Christ shall all be made alive, but each in his own order. Christ the first fruits, then at his coming those who belong to Christ. Those who belong to Christ, not those that don't belong to Christ. Okay? He's the first fruit. And we have had lessons in the past about what the first fruits is. The word in Greek is the protokotos. It's he is the premier one. He is the preeminent one, the premier one. And because he secured that right, all those that fall behind are guaranteed that right as well. And that's why the Holy Spirit comes in to ensures that guarantee is the down payment of that fact that we will if we believe. I mean, I make sure that's not for everybody. I'll make sure you get that right for me. What I'm trying to tell you. That's for all those that believe in his appearing. Okay. So let's look at the lesson. Leviticus 23. Okay, so having done that, God has set these feasts, and we will skip the first 9 verses because these first 8 verses of this chapter. But bear in mind what like I said, we covered early in other lessons from different passages of Scripture, is the ones of God's creating the Sabbath and also God creating the Passover. Because when like I said to you earlier, when they came out of Egypt, God told Moses, I want you to teach them how to live in the land. You're used to having everything you need over there to take care of yourself. But when you get to your land I'm going to give you, you're going to have your freedom. And I'm going to give you your first crop free. But henceforth, you got to work for it. Earn it. Once I earn it, you got to till the soil. You got to tend the crops, the trees, the prune the vines, whatever you can call it. So it says here in verse 9, and this is where we start the feast of first fruits right here. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land, it says, when you come into the land, remember when they were in the land, they didn't have this stuff. Remember, on their exit out of the land, they already commemorated Passover. So these were started after they left the land. Because remember also, when they're in the wilderness traveling, God fed them also with manna and quail.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, not every day, but manna every day. Not quail every day.
Right.
Yeah.
But they did eat for a while. They said, until you get sick of it, it comes out of your nostrils, out of your nose.
And then they got
Okay?
tired.
Okay? And it says, and when you come to the land that I will give you and reap its harvest. In other words, when you come to the land, the first fruit's going to be already there, which is the barley crop.
Okay.
The barley crop. Remember back in the plagues, in chapter 7, in the 7th plague, God destroyed with hail the barley crops. The 8th plague, he sent the locusts to eat the wheat crop. God's restoring again. This is about God's power. God's power to restore, to resurrect, and to whatever. Okay. And it says, and you shall bring the sheaf. What's a sheaf? Now sheaves, what's a sheaf? Sheaf is singular for sheaves. What's a sheaf?
I looked up what the sheaf offering meant.
Hmm.
I looked up what the sheaf offering meant. But I didn't know what the sheaf was.
Isn't the sheep like a bundle of wheat?
That's sheaves.
Oh, okay.
A bundle.
So
The singular is a
just
sheaf.
one.
A bundle of grain stalks laid lengthwise and tied together after reaping.
Mm-hmm. And that's the sheaves. Bringing in the sheaves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
sheep
you
is
tie
just
them-
one.
A sheaf is one, it's singular. You've seen when you go to the grocery store and you see what's that little ugly plant with the people like I don't like unless you grill it?
Asparagus?
Asparagus. They get the one with the head of fruit on top.
Mm-hmm.
They put it in bundles. The sheaf, I thought it was a sheaf of asparagus. a sheaf of sparrows. But remember, if you're familiar with wheat or barley,
Okay.
one wheat like rice does grows on a stalk,
Oh, the little
and it shoots
flowers.
up, and at the top of that stalk, the fruit produces little clusters. If it's oats, not oats. If it's barley, if it's barley, correct. But if it's wheat or if it's rice, and then those little clusters are your grain.
Mm-hmm.
One of those, while it was fully ripe, but remember that when they brought it to the priest, they were to bring the priest, and he was to be roasted, and then the priest was to wave it, because they brought it to the tabernacle, to the priest for the blessing. Let me read for you.
I didn't know that's what that was. All the time I've seen that, but I didn't really know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see the top of those fruits and
That's the fruit. That's the stuff we destroy and take all the grain out and make all the white flour. For the wheat.
Oh, gotcha.
We take the good part away. And we don't like the bran part and all the husky part. We like the when you strip the sheave it down, not sheave it down. When you strip it down to the inner sides of it, we call it the endosperm, the insides of it, and mash it up and eat that. Because we like that because for whatever reason, but it's not as healthy for it. But we eat it all the time. That's what white flour is all about, as opposed to some good old buckwheat flour, or that's part of all the stuff inside of it, the grain, the endosperm, and all the other stuff. Up, I can't even read the name. Okay, enough about biology. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. It says 20. Is it 12? No. You should your harvest to the priest, and verse 11, and he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, so that you may be accepted. See, if you want God to bless the rest of the crop that's coming later on, you got to give him the first fruits. And that's why it's so important that I tell you to last week's lesson. Tithing is only a beginning point. If you want God to really bless you by being faithful, I'm not going to say that God's going to bless you where you want He's going to bless you now. Now, don't hear me saying, because you give $1,000, I'll give you $10,000. I ain't never, you hear me say I'm not saying. Because God may try to give you 1,000 blessings with hugs and kisses from somebody. Or to get you out of debt. Whatever He so pleases. Is that you want the blessings, be obedient. Be obedient. And it says, 13, and the grain offering, it shall be of 2/10 of an ephah, of one fine flour with oil.
Did you read 12?
Oh, did I skip 12? Okay, then go to 12. And no, I didn't, you're right. And on the day when you wave the sheaf, you shall offer, you're right, you shall offer a male lamb of 1 year old without blemish as a burnt offering to the Lord. So that male lamb, still that first fruit again. Young, tender, without blemish, the first fruit of that crop, the lamb crop of the year. And it says, and the grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah, of fine flour mixed with oil, a food offering to the Lord with a pleasing aroma, and a drink offering, that's the wine, with it shall be of wine, 1/4 of a hin. You know, I don't. That kind of look at what hin and ephah is, so you can look at what that measure equates to in our language. But an ephah is how much of a bushel?
An ephah is 2/10 of an ephah is about 7 pounds.
7 pounds, okay.
And then a quarter of a hin is about a quart.
Okay.
Or a liter.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I got too. Mine says an ephah is about 3/5 of a bushel. You want a bushel basket, right? About 3/5 of a bushel, not quite, a little bit more than half a bushel, or 22 liters. A hen is about 4 quarts. It's what we call a gallon. About 3.5 liters. You know. So that's the measurement for that. And 14, and you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or flesh, until this same day, until you have bought the offering of the Lord, and offered to God. It is a statute forever throughout your generation in all your dwellings. So this is about a fasting. This is a fast. Get your now. On this one, this is a fast. can't eat it until that. You can't eat it until that day when it's offered after the priest blesses it. Then you eat it. And this is also fine flour says with oil, but no leaven. This has no leaven
No bread, no yeast.
in this one here. But when God reconstitutes the church, leaven is typically associated with what? Sin or corruption. But when he reconstitutes it on the second one for the feast for the wheat, you'll see what he changes it. Okay. Now let's look at the feast of wheat, or the festival of wheat. 7 times 7, the 7 completions or perfections. You shall count, and he said, and after this, and after that time, okay, you have that commemoration. What you got here is really a series of time where they come into the land where they didn't have to work. The crop was already produced. They produce it, and they have these commemorations to celebrate God's provision, God's sovereign power to provide for His people in a land that they're going to that they didn't have to do themselves. But then they come down to day 49. They're gonna go out. They're gonna harvest the wheat crop now. And it says, "And you shall count 7 full weeks, 49 days, from the day of the Sabbath." That's back from the other Sabbath, okay? From the day that you bought the sheaf and of the wave offering. So in other words, from the Sabbath when the priest did the wave offering, 49 days later, okay, you shall count 50 days, Pentecost, to the day after the Sabbath day. After the Sabbath day. It's important to understand that this was offered and done on the Sabbath, but the blessings came on the first day of the week. Jesus Christ rose on the first day of the week. Remember, He died and rested on that Friday and on the Sabbath. But He rose on the first day of the week. And you shall present a grain offering of new grain, this is new grain, which is the wheat, to the Lord. You shall bring from your dwelling places, what it says, 2 loaves of bread to be waved, made of 2/10 of an ephah. That's a different measurement from the first one, it's the barley, remember? And they shall be of fine flour, and shall be baked with 11. Get that? That's different. That's the reconstitution of the church. Or the old, let's just say, that's the reconstitution of the new covenant. Put it that way. New covenant. And it says, as first fruits to the Lord, and you shall present with the bread 7 lambs. Remember it says earlier? It was 1, was it not? Or 2, something like that. But now it's 7 lambs. 7 meaning perfection. 7 lambs, a year old without blemish, and 1 bull. Also, you see the bull now? I ain't got a calendar now. And from the herd and 2 rams, and they shall be a burnt offering to the Lord with their grain offering. So you got a burnt offering going on along with the grain offering, and their drink offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And you shall offer 1 male goat for a sin offering, and 2 male lambs of 3-year-old as a sacrifice of a peace offering. So they offer not only the burnt offering and peace offering and sin offering, they offer, see, now that He's given them more, they're required to do more. They got enough to make atonement for this, a sin offering, a peace offering, burnt offering. And it says,
20, yeah. And the priest shall,
my number is so small here.
and the priest shall wave them.
Yeah. And the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruit. as a wave offering before the Lord with the 2 lambs. And they shall be holy to the Lord for the priest. And you shall make a proclamation on the same day. You shall hold a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. It is a statute forever in all your dwelling places throughout your generations. So they're still observing the Sabbath. He said, do not stand there on the day, do no work. And then on that day, let these convocations and these offerings, these things take place. It says, and when you reap, 22, and when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your fields right up to the edges, nor shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor, for the sojourner. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. I am Yahweh. I am your personal God among all gods. I am the God of God. I am the God, your Father, of the 3 in 1. What he's saying here to them is that after you do these offerings and do the sacrifices associated with the offerings, he said to remember at the end of the harvest of the wheat crop, when you go out and do your harvest of your wheat, remember to leave the edges of the field. And don't go back and pick up the scraps. You know, when you harvest stuff, you do a what we call a mop up mission. It's to go back and pick up the rest of you got, because when you're harvesting, a lot of times you lose a lot of good pieces. Go back and pick it up. He says, don't go back a second time. When you cut it and you bundle it, what's left behind, leave it there in the middle of the field. But also, when you go to the fields, you leave 5 feet here, between here and here, for the sojourning. You eat on that part that's in here and there. Leave both edges, all 4 corners. I remember when I was a child, I used to reap something all the time. People used to, the old people especially, would go by Mr. John's field, and they would take heads of corn. And I thought that was terrible. And to people, they say, "You think you can do that, boy?" So that's for the folk. That's for the po folk. But of course everybody didn't follow that rule, of course, because some people may shoot you. But I remember very much so. I've seen when I was a kid, growing up in the country, people going to cornfields, taking heads of corn on the edges of the cornfield, but not into the middle of the field. Unless you were just stealing. That was just outright stealing. Because they were saying that people, and some farmers did allow people to go and take a few heads here and there, because what you're going to miss. But the point he's saying, remember, you were sojourners in the wilderness. You didn't have anything, and I fed you. So when sojourner comes to your land, that's for the poor. God has always made. Let's see, we don't forget about that. God has always made provisions for the poor, because He said in His Word, Jesus said, "The poor you'll have with you always," and yes, you will. And we as government supposed to always have provisions for the poor, but we don't necessarily do that. Not that way anyway, because we want to offer ourselves. Even those of us that can give, we still want to offer ourselves, because I earned it, not you. I work for that. I got up at 4 o'clock every morning, came home at 10 o'clock every night. I earned it. That's how we are. Yeah. It's mine. Yeah. So what you have here is that you have God institute things to remind them of the time when He took the first fruits of Egypt and saved the first fruits of Israel. He's reminding them of the Sabbaths He created to worship Him, and that all power belongs, because God is God of the Sabbath. Is that He ordains it because He can ordain it, because He deserves it, because He is a deliverer. Because this is what I call RR. This is the restoration, and this is the resurrection, and this is what He does all the restoring. He does the restoration. He does the resurrection. He does all these things. He gives us the power to get stuff. He restores us when we are running afraid from the enemy. He also provides for the poor, those that don't have it all. And this is important to understand that God always has made provisions for the poor. Always. for those that don't have, for the sojourner, because you might be again a sojourner yourself. You never know. Because just because you got it today, don't mean you're gonna have it tomorrow or tonight. You know. So what we have here in these 9 to 22 verses, we have actually 3 things that we usually celebrate. We talk about the feast of first fruits, the the festival of weeks, and it's culminated with Pentecost. Because on that 50th day, being the first day of the week, that's when Pentecost. That's when the power came. That's when the empowering got. And that's why I said to you earlier about when God gave them this thing, He allowed leaven in this one here for the restoration or the reconstitution of His people, of His covenant, His people. Remember, He didn't have leaven in the first one, the barley, but there was leaven because there's more and more and more a blessing and not of a curse to God's people. Any questions? I think I'm gonna sit down.
Amen.
When I was thinking about the unleavened, the reason they did the unleavened is when he was telling them, you ain't gonna have time for that yeast to rise. I'm gonna come quick. You're gonna have to move fast to get out of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't
Right.
have time for all that.
Right,
And so now for the Passover.
Right.
So now,
right. But now that He's
that's it.
reconstituted,
Yeah.
He says, you get time
Time.
now. I've delivered you. I already delivered you. Now it's time to sustain you. I've sustained you. He said, now it's time to restore you. So what this is really about is deliverance, sustaining, how God sustains us and how God restores us in His power. And we need to remember that we didn't get it for ourselves. God has the power to preserve. God is the one that allows us to persevere. This is really, more than anything else, about to get our minds off ourselves and realize that this is God-centered. This is theocentric, not man-centered, but God-centered.